Tonight on Reporting Scotland, a police officer is injured amid disorder in Edinburgh last night. A 14-year-old boy was arrested and charged with fireworks offences. It came hours before an exclusion zone on fireworks in parts of the city came into force. Also on tonight's programme, police officers in Scotland have withdrawn goodwill in a dispute over pay. It means they will stop their shifts at the designated time and won't start early. It's a move similar to Work to Rule. There's further concern about whether funding will be available to dual the A9 between Perth and Inverness by 2035.
Does the stuff in here make you feel comfortable?
No.
Or does it make you feel uncomfortable?
Make me feel horribly uncomfortable.
1 in 40 of us are hoarders. There's now calls for a Scotland-wide approach to manage and tackle it.
And coming up in the sport, we'll look ahead to the League Cup semi-finals with a huge clash between Celtic and Aberdeen and a potentially must-win game for Philippe Clement as his Rangers side face Motherwell.
Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Friday's programme. Despicable behaviour, deeply disappointing and a horrible night for the city. All condemnation levelled at those involved in a night of disorder in Edinburgh last night. Police vans were pelted with bricks and fireworks and an officer injured when the window of her vehicle was shattered. And an open-top bus carrying young people was also targeted. All just hours before so-called firework control zones came into force in some areas. Stephen Gordon reports.
On Edinburgh's streets, signs of the disorder that's become a feature of this time of year. The pattern here on the south side, where buses were targeted by fireworks, was repeated in various parts of the city, including Niddrie, Peter Kelly's home for nearly 30 years.
I could hear fireworks starting to go off about 9 o'clock, some really loud explosive fireworks. Then we could hear about 9:30 what sounded like the police helicopter circling overhead for quite a length of period of time. This is third year in a row that this has been happening in this area.
Hay Avenue here in Niddrie was the scene of the worst trouble during last year's bonfire night. And from early evening yesterday there was a large police presence in the area. The disorder that followed involved youths with fireworks, and police say one officer was injured when a brick was thrown through the window of the van she was driving.
Last night's trouble wasn't on the same scale as last year, when fireworks and petrol bombs were used to target officers in riot gear. But police say a 14-year-old boy has been arrested in connection with firework offences, while petrol and fireworks were seized during a targeted search.
In respect of those individuals who are responsible, you may not have been arrested yet, but it will come. We have a significant, substantial, robust investigation ongoing right now. You will be identified, you will be arrested, and you will be brought to justice.
In response to last year's unrest, Edinburgh Council have, for the first time, introduced firework control zones where the private use of fireworks is illegal. Niddrie is one of 4 areas covered by the restrictions that took effect from today.
I hope that's a deterrent, but I will still call, and I will be writing to the UK Government and the Scottish Government to support our calls for a ban on the public sale of fireworks. These are mini explosives that we are selling across the counter to adults or young people to set off in front of public sector workers, and that needs to end.
A look at the map shows not all areas where trouble flared last night are covered by firework control zones. Ahead of the weekend, police have brought in extra resources.
Definitely enough policing, but they're out-handed with the number of kids that's gone about. What can you do with them? There's too many of them, there's not enough police.
Yeah, no, he was quite upset last night. There was quite a lot of fireworks in the Burren area behind us. I don't think they should be available to the public. I think they should be private displays only in one night of the year.
Back in Niddrie, Peter's view is that history's repeating because local people aren't listened to.
I'm sure the people in Wester Hailes or Pilton will feel much the same about Edinburgh City Council, but it's been pretty much easy to ignore because the assumption is that's what happens in Niddrie.
Another conversation about prevention will soon begin. Before then, the authorities' focus is on stopping more disorder. Stephen Gordon, Reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Well, just as we approach what's traditionally one of the busiest times of the year for emergency services, police officers here have taken one of the closest steps they can to industrial action. At 5 o'clock this evening, they withdrew goodwill, which means they will generally stop shifts at their scheduled time and won't start early. The Scottish Police Federation, which represents rank and file officers, says the move has been taken out of sheer disappointment at a recent pay offer. Well, our reporter Katie Hunter is with us. Katie, just talk us through what's happened here.
Well, Laura, by law, police officers can't strike and they can't take industrial action. So what this means is that many officers won't be working that extra 15, 20 minutes perhaps at the beginning or the end of their shifts. The Scottish Police Federation, for example, also says officers won't be taking personal protective equipment home with them, regardless of where their shift starts the next day. And the Federation says it wants to show the extent to which the officers' goodwill keeps the service going. And they also think that this move will hit Police Scotland in the pocket. It will cost them money. But we saw in Stephen's report there the trouble in some parts of Edinburgh last night. There are two big football matches in Glasgow this weekend. So earlier I asked the Scottish Police Federation what impact this might have on the public.
I don't think there'll be any impact on the public. It's not about an impact on the public. You know, police officers are very much aware of the victims of crime, are aware of the safety of the community. So it's to have an impact on the organisation and have a financial impact on the organisation, to let Police Scotland, the Scottish Government and the Scottish Police Authority understand that it's the goodwill of police officers that keep the service afloat.
What are Police Scotland and the Scottish Government saying then?
Well, Laura, the pay offer on the table at the moment is 4.75%. The Scottish Police Federation says it's asked for 5.5%, but that was rejected. Police Scotland says it's right that police officers' public service is recognised, that it's rewarded, and that it's confident officers will continue to demonstrate the highest levels of commitment to communities. Now, the Scottish Government says it's made what it believes to be a very fair offer of 4.75%. It says that that is above inflation, and it says this is the maximum affordable offer in the face of finances, public finances that remain under severe pressure.
We'll see what happens then. OK, thank you very much, Katie. To some of the day's other stories now. And a man has been arrested by police investigating the murder of a woman in Glasgow city centre. Sandy Butler was found seriously injured on St Mungo Avenue on Tuesday afternoon before being pronounced dead a short time later. Police Scotland said a 53-year-old man had now been arrested over her death. Inquiries are continuing. A cancer ward in an East Ayrshire hospital is to close after a number of patients became infected with mould. The cases were detected at Crosshouse Hospital near Kilmarnock earlier this year. NHS Ayrshire and Arran said national reporting requirements had been followed and the source of the mould was under investigation. Now, the A9 is described as a lifeline route and is one of the longest roads in the country, stretching from Falkirk in the Central Belt to Thurso in the north. And yet, years on from a pledge to create a dual carriageway on the busiest and one of the most dangerous stretches between Perth and Inverness, there are fresh fears the project won't secure the funding it needs to meet its revised deadline of 2035. Ian McInnes has more.
It is the key route linking north and south down the spine of Scotland. But despite a promise to dual the A9 to reduce fatalities and serious injuries, only 11 miles of more than 80 have been completed.
Why the delay then? Well, Holyrood's Petitions Committee say that wrangles over funding led to the missing of the 2025 deadline. But more worrying still, perhaps, is their concern that funding might not be available when it's needed to meet the new 2035 deadline.
The delay isn't down to some kind of insidious conspiracy to frustrate the road, but what there was a complete lack of transparency and clarity about the funding of this road. And I think because the funding streams became confused and because there was a change of ministers over time, I think part of the delay is down to that lack of scrutiny and that lack of focus.
It's worth remembering it's been a long and winding road since dualling was first promised.
And after years of talk, we have included in the SGPR our intention to improve the A9 to dual carriageway standard between Perth and Inverness.
Just a few years later, we got a proposed timescale.
This is a £3 billion project. We're dualling 80 miles of road between Perth and Inverness. We can bring forward the completion date from 2025.
But it became clear that 2025 wasn't going to happen, although no one would admit that publicly until last year.
Now, members will know that the original completion date for the dualling of the A9 was scheduled to be 2025. And as MSPs will now understand, that timescale is simply no longer achievable.
And now we have a new timetable, 10 years later than the original estimate. Laura Hansler, who submitted the petition, says she's angry, infuriated, but not surprised at the findings.
It's simply not good enough. They cannot be still dragging their feet on funding. There's been plenty of other infrastructure projects stated in this report in central Scotland and southern Scotland that were completed in their time frame. So why has our A9 not been delivered? Why are we not a priority to this government?
Transport Scotland says it will take the appropriate time to consider and respond to the recommendations made. But there's a commitment from the Transport Secretary.
Not only the construction of the dualling of the A9 will have our full attention and priority, but also the ongoing safety issues. We have a planning schedule in terms of construction, we have a planning schedule in terms of reporting and openness, and in terms of the financial aspects, we've set out clearly what will we be using capital for, what would we want to use the mutual investment model for.
This project has a long way to run yet, and there are very real concerns about how long this dualling process will take, and if it even will happen at all. Ian McInnes reporting Scotland by the A9.
Now, next week, either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump will emerge victorious in a US presidential race which experts are still saying is too close to call. And it's causing ripples here. First, John Swinney weighed in, with the First Minister declaring his backing for Harris. And now, Trump's business empire, which includes his golf courses in Scotland, has responded, describing the move as appalling. Well, our political correspondent Phil Sim joins us now from Holyrood. Phil, just exactly what did John Swinney say then?
Well, there is a bit of a political convention that normally leaders wouldn't comment on an election in another country. Certainly the Scottish Government's official line has been that it's for people in America to decide who the president will be, despite the fact I think we know most people in the government probably would prefer Kamala Harris. You can see why it might not be wise to make such a call when you're going to have to deal with whoever wins. It's not unprecedented that they get it wrong. In 2016, Nicola Sturgeon backed Hillary Clinton. Obviously, Donald Trump then won that election and Nicola Sturgeon had to write to him with congratulations. He ended up phoning her up to speak about their shared values. So John Swinney was asked by reporters at Holyrood this week about what he thought about this, and he was pretty clear in his answer. Here is what he had to say.
People in the United States of America should vote for Kamala Harris, and I've not come to that conclusion only because Donald Trump is opposed to Scottish independence. Thanks very much. Thank you, Chris.
What response has there been from Trump then?
Well, Donald Trump does, of course, have some Scottish roots. His mother's from the Isle of Lewis, and he does take interest in our politics here. You know, he was asked on a podcast this week about Scottish independence, and he said he hopes it doesn't happen. That's what John Swinney was referring to there in that clip. And of course, he has business interests here. He has his golf courses in Aberdeenshire and in Ayrshire, and it's them that have responded to this. It's Trump International that responded to John Swinney. They said that Donald Trump has shown unwavering commitment to Scotland. He's poured hundreds of millions of dollars into the economy and he's attracted tens of thousands of visitors. And they say it's appalling for John Swinney to insult that commitment. Now, I don't suppose this endorsement is going to swing the election race as close as it apparently is. And ultimately, John Swinney's not going to have as much contact with whoever the winner is as, say, you know, Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, would do. But I think it does add a wee bit of additional interest to a contest which will certainly be very closely watched here when it reaches its conclusion next week.
Indeed, we will see what happens. Thank you very much, Phil. A Scottish charity which transports pickups and 4x4s to Ukraine says the vehicles have now helped save thousands of lives on the front line of the war. Pickups for Peace has now moved 500 trucks, cars and ambulances to the country from across Scotland and around the UK. It's emerged many of them have been used to rescue soldiers and civilians from fierce fighting. James Chain has this report from Western Ukraine.
When the grenades had finished their work, there was little left. The donated pickup was reduced to a burned-out shell near the town of Pokrovsk, scene of some of the fiercest fighting on Ukraine's front line. It was taken there by a Scottish charity, driven by a British Army veteran, one of a steady flow of vehicles into the country and onto the battlefield. The latest convoy arrived this afternoon, across Europe and over the border, bringing the number of pickups above 500. Many of the drivers are farmers, some of them students, from Edinburgh, Perth and across the UK.
I think we get a very sanitised version of what's happening, and I think, you know, hopefully with what we're doing, okay, we're not going to be seeing the right in the front line, but hopefully we're going to see that this
is really going to where it's needed.
Yeah, anxious, but any anxieties I have is kind of a sense of purpose.
The volunteers drive them as far as Lviv in western Ukraine. The city has still suffered missile and drone strikes, but on the doorstep of the European Union, it's considered safer than many places further east. The vehicles don't remain here in Lviv for too long. They'll be collected by soldiers from all over Ukraine and transported to the battlefield.
Here we can see this is holes from this could be a shotgun, but I think that it was from mortars.
Some of them limp back here, often bearing the scars of battle. The team say this one, now riddled with bullet holes, rescued troops during the recent Kursk offensive as Ukrainian forces took Russian territory. Mechanics here will patch it up, check it over and send it back into the conflict zone. The Ukrainian volunteers preparing for those dangerous journeys have formed close bonds with their British colleagues.
We feel supported. We feel supported and we feel like we are not alone in this world, that there's someone to help us, to support us, to give us an aid.
The drivers, mechanics, veterans and volunteers say they'll continue their efforts for as long as it takes. A common theme, this city, like every Ukrainian city, remains at war. James Chain reporting, Scotland, Lviv.
Now, about 1 in 40 people are believed to be hoarders. It's an underreported condition that often goes hand in hand with other mental illnesses. Now, there's a call for it to be better managed with an agreed Scotland-wide approach to minimise the hurt it causes to people who hoard. Ian Hamilton went to meet one hoarder in Edinburgh.
Hi, Dan.
Oh, hi.
That's Ian Hamilton from BBC
Hi.
Scotland.
Good to see you.
Okay, can I come in?
Yes, please do. Please do.
If I could take your arm.
I've
come to meet Dan McNee. By his own admission, he's a lifelong hoarder. Right. You certainly get quite a bit of stuff. He puts his hoarding down to emotional trauma, which began in childhood.
I used to save everything that most people throw into the garbage. I'd had 13 addresses by the time I turned 16. And that was over 3 continents, and 3 of those were boarding very briefly, but it continued well into my adult life. And that is a degree of upheaval that is just way, 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 way out with the norm. And I've been trying to establish my base in life where I never, ever, 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 ever move again. It's like a carpet that if you get that pulled out away from underneath you.
There's an estimated 137,000 people in Scotland who hoard. It can be triggered by loss, trauma or mental health issues.
Let's just start thinking about what it is that we can do.
At this conference in Edinburgh, there are calls to help people like Dan, with an agreed nationwide strategy. Where's the line between a messy house and a hoarding house?
When it starts to impact on your daily living, you know, when you can no longer use the rooms in your home for their intended purpose, then it's impacting your life, and that's when I would say seek some help.
If the people in this room agree an approach, Scotland could be a leading global example on how to support hoarders.
Really, the research into hoarding is only about 40 years old. So if you compare that with other psychiatric illnesses like depression, we've been studying that for 300 years.
Does the stuff in here make you feel comfortable?
No.
Or does it make you feel uncomfortable?
It made me feel horribly uncomfortable.
So people might ask him, well, if it makes you feel uncomfortable,
yeah,
why hold on to it?
Because it's me, it's my life.
That report from Ian Hamilton. OK, let's get to next sport now with Lewis, and an interesting weekend of football in prospect.
There's a lot at stake for the teams involved indeed, Laura. Looking forward to seeing how it all pans out. Thanks very much. Hello there. Yes, it is semi-final weekend in the League Cup and all 4 teams are travelling to the National Stadium with a point to prove in different ways. For the current holders, Rangers, the stakes are high. A string of poor domestic results has heaped pressure on manager Philippe Clement, with many calling Sunday's match against Aberdeen a must-win for the Belgian. Celtic won the competition back in 2023 and come into the penultimate round on an unbeaten domestic run. They faced their closest rivals of the season so far, but manager Brendan Rodgers welcomed the challenge from Aberdeen, saying the Dons' resurgence could help his own team improve. Meanwhile, Jimmy Tilleen's men sit joint top of the league as well, also unbeaten, and are coming off the back of an impressive midweek win against Rangers. It's been 10 years since Aberdeen last lifted the cup. But compare that to the almost 75 years that Motherwell have had to wait. They came close back in 2018, beating Rangers at this very stage before losing to Celtic in the final. Stuart Kettlewell's side will be desperate to go one stage further and will be led out by an 18-year-old captain on Sunday. Kenny Crawford has this report.
Bring your hand outside, bring it round towards me.
Meet Lennon Miller, whose penalty put the Steelmen in this cup semi, and expectation is growing.
More. Serious face.
Despite only turning 18 in August, Miller's had to show that serious face on the pitch too, and he's delivered. His next responsibility is to skipper the team at the National Stadium, in the absence of both Paul McGinn and Stephen O'Donnell through injury.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to captaining this club. It's where I've been most of my life really, and the fact that I came through the academy and to captain your team out at Hampden's a massive thing for me. And as I said, nothing really changes. I'll go out and I'll try and perform as best I can and hopefully get this team to a final.
Standing in their way is a Rangers side reeling after defeat in the Granite City. Motherwell's manager wants to put them under more pressure.
We have to go and try and disrupt the flow of Rangers. Similar to Celtic on Sunday, you understand a lot of the time that they'll have bits of control in certain areas of the pitch. But the one thing I think we've always been against Rangers in my time is a goal threat. I think we've always carried that threat at the top end of the pitch.
Kettlewell's counterpart believes the Rangers board will keep the faith.
I'm very confident about that because that was also the really clear message to step in a story for longer term. They knew everything about the numbers, about what was necessary.
It's down to us as players to improve ourselves and obviously first and foremost deliver the results that the club want and the fans want.
Retaining the League Cup trophy is what those supporters demand. Kenny Crawford, reporting Scotland.
Rugby and Scotland captain Sione Tuipulotu says his club taking the URC Championship last season will be the inspiration he needs to lead his country to victory against Fiji tomorrow in their autumn test opener. The Glasgow Warriors centre will wear the armband for Scotland for the first time in an experienced team that also sees Darcy Graham start his first test since last year's World Cup, and the captain admits he was caught a bit by surprise when given the responsibility.
The Scotland coaches often come into Glasgow every now and then just to talk about how we're going, what we need to do better, and we were in a big group. And then he asked me to stay back after the group, and I thought I was in trouble, to be honest. So I was a bit anxious about it. But then, he just basically asked me, how I would feel about captaincy, and I was taken back by it a little bit just because I didn't expect it. But I've had experience over the last couple of years captaining, vice captaining Scotland and captaining Scotland, but also my experience at Glasgow, captaining Glasgow in big games.
Laura Muir will receive another medal this weekend for a race that she took part in almost 10 years ago. The Scot was 21 when she finished 4th in the 3,000 metres at the European Athletics Indoor Championship in Prague, but that was upgraded to bronze in January after race winner Yelena Karabkina of Russia was found guilty of doping offences. Now 31, Muir will receive her medal at the Lindsay's short course cross-country event at Kirkcaldy on Saturday. And it's another career gold and record for this man. Duncan Scott has broken the 400-metre freestyle British record by 2.5 seconds as he claimed gold at the short course World Cup event in Singapore. The Scot swam in 3 minutes 34.46 seconds to break the previous record set by James Guy in 2014. Yeah, so smashing the record there, quite incredible.
That's the kind of story we like to end on.
That's what we like in sport.
Thanks, Lewis. OK, now let's go over to Louise Cowie to find out what's happening on the BBC Scotland channel at 7 o'clock.
Tonight we'll have the latest from Spain, where more than 200 people have died in flash floods. We'll have more on fears over funding for dualling the A9. I'll be speaking to one campaigner who's calling for work to be accelerated. And a full sports roundup with former player and manager Paul Lambert, who's joining us live to preview the League Cup semi-finals. See you in a few minutes over on the BBC Scotland channel.
And now Christopher is here with the weather. What kind of weekend will it be?
Fairly cloudy, but largely mild with light winds.
It's good enough.
Very much indeed, Laura. Very good evening to you. We've had a lot of cloud around today, haven't we? And it has been mild for most, but we've seen brighter conditions in the far north and the Northern Isles. But despite the sunshine there in Shetland at the moment, it's just 3 degrees. And let me show you why. Now, this is the satellite imagery. You can see we've got this band of cloud there. That's a cold front. To the north of it, the cold air digging in. To the south of it, the milder air. And it's the mild air that wins out over this weekend. So how do we get there? Let's take a look at the next few hours. A lot of cloud around, with the thickest cloud, the odd spot of light rain or drizzle. We've still got that cold air in place across the far north and the Northern Isles, but across parts of central and southern Scotland holding at around 9 or 10 Celsius. Some hill fog around as well. So this weekend, you can see we've got high pressure holding on, but the cold air gets pushed away and the mild air is in place. That means tomorrow morning it's a cloudy, overcast start for many parts of the country. Some patchy light rain across the Northern Isles. And then as we head through towards the afternoon, the odd spot of light rain or drizzle elsewhere, but for most it is dry and for many it is cloudy. Now with the southwesterly wind, once again it's mild, 13, 14 Celsius. A few holes in the cloud at times, a few glimpses of some brighter weather, but the best of any sunshine likely across parts of the northeast through Murray and Aberdeenshire. Around the northwest coast it will be windy from a southwesterly direction, same too across Orkney and Shetland. So for those hill walking or climbing, a lot of cloud around, certainly through the course of the day. Cloud bases around 300 to 500 metres first thing, but then tending to rise through the day. The winds from a southwesterly direction, gusting to around 35 to 45 miles an hour, and temperatures on the summits around about 6 or 7 Celsius. There will be a wind chill, as you can see there, the best of the sunshine in the northeast. As we head into tomorrow evening and tomorrow night, once again a lot of cloud around, but just notice on the chart there some holes in that cloud in the northeast, so cooler conditions for the likes of Murray, Aberdeenshire, down towards Angus, perhaps 3 degrees in Aberdeen. Elsewhere, the cloud acting like a blanket, so closer to 9 or 10 Celsius. That takes us to Sunday, and we've still got the holes in the clouds, so a brighter picture across the northeast on Sunday. Elsewhere, still fairly cloudy, mostly dry, but the air just a little bit drier, so hopefully that cloud breaking more readily. 13, 14 Celsius, the afternoon high. And then looking ahead towards next week, initially the high pressure holds on, but then clears, allowing weather fronts to bring rain. And once again, some very mild air moving in from the southwest. That's the forecast for now. Laura.
Thank you, Christopher. And that is Reporting Scotland for now. Anne McAlpine will be here with your late news around 10:30 tonight. Join her then if you can. In the meantime, from everyone here, do enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.